The small ball lineup became popular in the NBA primarily in the early 2000s, with significant contributions from the 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns under head coach Mike D'Antoni. This approach emphasized speed, spacing, and ball movement, utilizing smaller, more versatile lineups to outpace and outscore opponents. The trend gained further prominence and widespread adoption following the success of the Golden State Warriors, particularly during their championship runs in the mid-2010s. The Warriors, under head coach Steve Kerr, popularized this trend by having versatile players like Draymond Green playing at center, enhancing floor spacing and shooting. And this strategic shift led to other teams copying this style of lineup in hopes of finding similar success. Fast forward to 2024, though, and this type of lineup is showing its weakness. We're in the era where elite bigs are showing their dominance again, while also adapting to how the game is played today. And it leaves us with the question, are the small ball lineups dying? Let's take a quick look at how we got to this position in the first place. Before the Warriors made the small ball lineup the NBA's standard, most contending teams had 1 or 2 bigs roaming the paint for them. There's Roy Hibbert, a 7'2" behemoth who was at one point one of the best defensive centers in the league. He was a key factor in the Pacers' deep playoff runs that battled the LeBron-led Heat in the 2010s. Then David West, a power forward who's a bully on the low block and is also a decent post defender. He was a 2-time All-Star back in New Orleans and then in Indiana. He got paired up to form a deadly front court with Hibbert. Then we got Greg Monroe, a traditional center who's a skilled post scorer and rebounder and will give you 16 points and 10 rebounds per night. There's also Carlos Boozer, a power forward with a game similar to traditional centers, known for dominating the low post, a 2-time All-Star in 07 to 08, and a key piece of the Bulls team that was once led by Derrick Rose. And then Jahlil Okafor, drafted 3rd in 2015, an elite post scorer projected to be one of the best centers in the league, pretty much got buried in the rotation on his 3rd season. These players have something in common: their lack of mobility, defensive limitations, and non-existing three-point shot caused their careers to die down. And now, let's quickly take a look at what made the small ball effective. With smaller, quicker, and more agile players on the floor, the pace of the game generally increases. This allowed teams to exploit mismatches more effectively and score before the defense had time to properly set up. The small ball maximized floor spacing by having multiple players who can shoot from the perimeter. Defensive players are forced to cover more ground, leaving them vulnerable to both perimeter shooting and drives to the basket. This led to smaller lineups that prioritize players that can switch on defense across multiple positions, whether it's disrupting shots in the paint or being a pest on the perimeter. The Miami Heat and the Golden State Warriors are notable examples of teams that have successfully implemented small ball strategies. The Heat, under coach Eric Spoelstra, utilized this approach effectively during their championship runs, leveraging the skills of players like LeBron James and Chris Bosh. Similarly, the Warriors, under coach Steve Kerr, revolutionized the NBA with their death lineup, which prioritized shooting, speed, and versatility, leading to multiple NBA championships. And this led to teams following this blueprint in order to compete with them and with the hopes of winning championships as well. But now, let's take a look at why the small ball is supposedly dying. These are the MVP award winners these past 6 years. Do you notice a trend on this list? These players are all elite inside scorers, and although Giannis is a power forward, he still gets most of his points by dominating in the paint. Jokic and Embiid are similar, bigs who mostly get buckets in the post, but they can then make you pay from outside if you leave them open. And this is where the small ball lineups finally show their vulnerability. These bigs aren't limited to just posting up in the low block anymore. They're skilled enough to handle the rock or create shots from the perimeter. Gone are the days of relying on undersized guys like Draymond Green to shut these players down. Although it still works on certain matchups, this usually becomes a struggle when bigs effectively use their size and strength to bully smaller defenders. And when the threes aren't falling, that means they're cooked since they don't have a threat to score inside the paint. And it's turning out that what Kobe Bryant said about this trend was right all along. I think the game will evolve back to big men. You have to have size to be able to compete. I think small ball works to a certain extent, but you have to have the size to be able to protect the rim. So I think the game will evolve back to that. And if you've been observing this season, the signs are clearly showing here. During the play-in tournaments this year, the Warriors got bounced out immediately because they didn't have any traditional centers who could contain Sabonis on the offensive glass. And not only that, they were struggling the whole season, fighting for a play-in spot because of the inconsistency of their whole roster. When their three-point shots ain't falling, it was guaranteed that they'll lose the game, especially when Steph Curry is struggling. And now, let's take a look at the teams that made it in the playoffs this year. Each of these teams has a big man, and they are a key piece of why their lineups is so successful. You can make the argument that in 2022, the Warriors still found a way to win it all while sticking with a small ball lineup. But then, if you think about it, the Celtics were also kind of undersized. An aging Horford at 6'9" and Robert Williams III at 6'8" were their centers. And then Andrew Wiggins, he finally decided to play like a first overall pick like he's supposed to. Then Klay Thompson, back when he's still capable of hitting shots, decided to turn back the clock when they needed him without shooting 0 for 10. Then Jordan freaking Poole, out of nowhere. This dude was making shots even from 30 damn feet like the baddies are watching him almost every game. And then we had to witness the beginning of the classic disappearing act from Jason Tatum, who couldn't even buy a bucket to save his life. But yeah, enough with these rants though. The other teams that won the finals since 2019, however, they all had bigs that were able to exploit mismatches. In 2019, the Raptors had Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka to patrol the paint. In 2020, the year of the Mickey Mouse ring, the Lakers had Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, and Anthony Davis bullying their opponents. In 2021, the Bucks had Brook Lopez paired with Giannis in the middle. And then, of course, the defending champs Nuggets showed how unstoppable Jokic is after winning it all in 2023. Small ball lineups aren't completely dead in 2024, but it feels like it's almost there. The league nowadays is showing a trend of having bigger guards that's almost the size of a wing player. And teams are also equipped with bigs that can do a couple of these things, which is score inside, defend, create plays for others, crash the glass, or simply have a guy that can do all of these. We often see teams now using wing players as primary ball handlers during stretches in a game too, which is arguably why it's now hard to have a guy that's under 6'9" to be patrolling the paint, since almost anyone can attack and make you vulnerable if you don't put enough long, lengthy players or some strength underneath. No diddy. But as I stated earlier, we're also seeing the lack of small ball during this year's playoffs. The Nuggets dominated the Lakers once again because they simply didn't have a center that can contain Nikola Jokic. Although Davis is capable of playing as a center on certain matchups, he's really a natural power forward, and he struggles to guard skilled centers. Jokic rallied the Nuggets back to life each time after halftime, and was scoring on Davis with ease on almost all of his possessions. Then the Timberwolves demolished the Suns by having another version of their twin tower on their front court for the majority of their lineup. Jusuf Nurkic, the Suns' only traditional big, couldn't find a way to counter the Wolves' front court. The Suns, even if they had the better team on paper, got sent to Cancun early after getting swept by the Wolves 4-0. And then, with the matchup of the Nuggets and Timberwolves, we really saw the importance of having a talented big man in your team, let alone three. We all know Jokic is in the league of his own, but this is the first time we've seen him struggle in a while during the playoffs. The Wolves are showing us that guys like Rudy Gobert can still be effective in today's NBA. Not only that, the Wolves found a way to make it work by having the two 7-footers Towns and Gobert together on the court. Then if they get tired, they got Naz Reid as a backup, who is another talented big man that's capable of defending and scoring. And having a three-headed monster like this is why Jokic struggled in his first two home games against the Wolves. They held the Joker to a 42% shooting, which is way below the 59% that he averaged against the Lakers. And remember, this is the three-time league MVP that we're talking about here. This isn't a knock hating on the Joker's game, but this is to show that the Wolves got the recipe to slow down a guy like him. Even he said this about the Wolves' front court trio during an interview.
To have a duplicate clone of myself, and then I can be fresh. When they sub another guy, I'm going to be fresh. I don't know, my friend. I think that's why they're good. They can play big. They can play small. They can put a lot of guys on a lot of guys, and they're long, physical. They rebound really well. They're aggressive.
And this isn't just a fluke, since the Lakers experienced a similar success when throwing Howard and Davis to disrupt Jokic a few years back. And again, Jokic is great and you can't completely shut him down. But this shows the importance of having guys that will be able to make him work for it. Even in 2023 playoffs, the same Timberwolves lineup held Jokic to a respectable 48% shooting from the field. With the resurgence of skilled centers, having the strength and the length to counter these players are just going to be even more important. And I haven't even talked about the young guys like Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama yet. This creates another situation for the teams where you really got to have length to slow them down, or else they'll just shoot over these guys. That's just my opinion though. I could be right or I could be wrong a few years from now. But what do you think? Do small ball lineups still have its use in today's NBA? Type down your opinions on the comments down below.
Dad.